Have you had your warm glass of water today? It's good for the heart, just like this story. What if your mother-in-law planned a surprise baby shower the day after yours? Sweet gesture or a controlling move? This is one toxic mother-in-law story with a twist you won't forget. What if someone planned a celebration for you but didn't tell you? Would you feel honored or uncomfortable? That's exactly the position our storyteller found herself in. She had just finished organizing her own baby shower, a big one, mind you, with all the close family and friends on the list. The guest list was set, the venue picked, food arrangements made. Everything felt just right, until her husband pulled her aside one evening and said, "Hey, just so you know, Mum's planning a surprise baby shower for you." At first she froze. A surprise baby shower? Right after the one she just planned? That's not just unexpected, it's confusing. Who throws two baby showers back to back? Now let's pause for a moment and be honest. There are situations where a surprise like this can be sweet. Some families have huge circles, and multiple events happen naturally. But here, something didn't feel right. Her instincts were telling her this wasn't about celebrating the baby. This was about control. You see, this isn't just any mother-in-law story. This is the kind of crazy meal story where the gesture seems generous on the outside, but the timing makes you raise your eyebrows. The day right after the original shower, without asking the mom-to-be, with guests she's never even met. It's hard not to see this as more than just a coincidence. And for someone who struggles with social anxiety, being surrounded by unfamiliar faces, especially while pregnant, isn't exactly comforting. But here's the kicker. The mother-in-law had already been involved in the planning of the original baby shower. She knew the date, she knew the plans. So why go ahead and plan her own? This is where it starts to feel like classic toxic mother-in-law behavior, where instead of supporting the event, she sets up a competing one, as if she couldn't handle being part of something she didn't fully control. It's the kind of family betrayal that isn't loud but cuts deep. And here's another twist. The couple was relying on her to help with food for the first shower, but now that she's busy organizing her own, that support may be off the table. So, let's ask the real question here. Was this really a heartfelt gesture from a grandmother-to-be who just wanted to celebrate in her own way? Or was it a subtle way of hijacking the spotlight? Sometimes the line between love and control in a narcissistic mother-in-law story is paper thin. And in relationships like these, it's not just about what's being done, but why. What do you think? Was this a thoughtful surprise, or the beginning of a justnomil podcast moment waiting to explode? Let us know in the comments below. That's exactly how this mom-to-be started to feel. After hearing that her mother-in-law was planning a second baby shower, without asking her and just one day after her own, she couldn't shake the unease. The event started sounding less like a celebration and more like a family drama podcast waiting to unfold. This wasn't the first time tension had brewed between her and her mother-in-law. See, when she and her husband first began dating, his mom didn't approve. Not because of anything specific she'd done, but because of where she came from. She's white, he's Filipino, and cultural expectations had already caused some silent friction. That unspoken judgment became louder once she got pregnant. Suddenly, her MIL had opinions about everything: what she should eat, how much weight she should gain, even comments about being disappointed that the baby was a girl instead of a boy. It wasn't just advice, it was pressure. And when you mix cultural control with pregnancy hormones, you've got the recipe for a true toxic family situation. So now, picture this. She's preparing emotionally and mentally for her big day, her planned baby shower, full of people she's close to and comfortable with. But instead of support, her MIL is splitting the focus, planning a guest list of people the mom-to-be barely knows, choosing food and themes without asking for input. It felt less like help and more like hijacking. And you know what? That's what makes this story so relatable. Many of us have been in situations where boundaries blur, especially with in-laws. There's this ongoing dance. How do I stay respectful while still protecting my space? It's why toxic mother-in-law stories resonate with so many people. They're not always loud and dramatic. Sometimes they're quiet power moves. silent rejections, passive control, and her husband. He tried to help. He told her about the surprise in advance, knowing she likes to plan. He offered to send their baby registry to his mom, so at least the gifts would be coordinated. But even with his support, she still felt caught between not wanting to offend and not wanting to be overruled. So here's where we pause and reflect. Is this just an overprotective grandmother trying to carve out her own moment of joy? Or is it one of those classic wife versus mother-in-law stories where control and ego quietly take center stage? The truth might be somewhere in between. But one thing's clear. When a baby shower becomes a power struggle, it's no longer just about the baby. What would you do in her shoes? Would you go to that second shower with a smile? Or would you finally say, "Enough is enough. Let's talk about it"? Here's a question that hits a little deeper. When does helping stop being helpful and start being controlling? Because in this story, our mom-to-be didn't just feel anxious about a second baby shower, she began to question the real motive behind it. Was this truly an act of love, or a way for her mother-in-law to reclaim some kind of influence in a situation that wasn't hers to lead? Remember, the first shower had already been planned. It wasn't just a casual get-together. It was an event where she and her husband invited all their relatives, a day they were emotionally and mentally preparing for, one that reflected their values, their preferences, and most importantly, their community. But this sudden surprise shower, it was being arranged without her say, without her input, and worse, it was scheduled immediately after hers, like a back-to-back performance. She couldn't help but feel like it wasn't about celebrating the baby anymore. It was about who gets the spotlight. This is where many of us start to nod in understanding, because when it comes to toxic mother-in-law dynamics, the red flags are often subtle. They come in the form of suggestions that are really ultimatums, or gifts that come with strings attached. She started noticing how often her MIL disregarded her comfort. She was socially anxious, shy, and now, 8 months pregnant. Yet instead of creating a calm and supportive environment, her mother-in-law was planning to fill a room with strangers, unfamiliar food, and likely unfamiliar customs. Not out of malice, but out of a need to take charge. And isn't that the heart of so many justnomil podcast stories? That blurred line between intention and impact. The truth is, her MIL may not be cruel, but she is clearly struggling to let go of control. And that's what turns family love into family betrayal, when power takes priority over peace. Even more complicated, though, is the husband's position. He did the right thing by being transparent. He tried to bridge the gap. But here's a hard question many couples face. How do you stay loyal to your spouse while still honoring your mother? It's not easy, and in this case, it seems like he's trying, but the mom-to-be still feels alone in navigating the emotional toll. A toll that's amplified by pregnancy, identity differences, and deep-rooted narcissistic mother-in-law tendencies. So now, the pressure is building. She doesn't want to offend, but she also doesn't want to pretend. Should she confront her MIL, decline the second shower, or just go along, smile for the photos, and count down the minutes? This story isn't just about baby showers. It's about boundaries, identity, and the small cracks that can grow into relationship drama if left unspoken. So, tell me, what's the real gift here? Showing up or speaking up? Let's keep the conversation going. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to smile through something that made you feel completely invisible? That's exactly where our mom-to-be found herself. By the time the second shower rolled around, the one planned by her mother-in-law, it no longer felt like a celebration. It felt like a performance, a stage where everyone else had a role, except the actual guest of honor. And it's not just about the party anymore. What hurt most wasn't the duplicate event, or even the unwanted attention. It was the quiet realization that her voice didn't matter in decisions that directly affected her. That kind of emotional dismissal? That's what fuels so many toxic family Reddit stories out there, where emotional control wears the mask of tradition or concern. She walked into that second shower feeling more like a prop than a person, surrounded by faces she didn't recognize, food she didn't choose, and conversations she couldn't relate to. No one asked her how she was doing. No one seemed to notice her anxiety. Everyone just smiled, took photos, and moved on. Meanwhile, her mother-in-law was glowing, hosting, controlling, dominating the guest list, the schedule, and even the registry, because yes, she had already handed it out to people without asking. To some, it might have looked like a thoughtful gesture, but to our storyteller, it was just another example of how boundaries were being bulldozed. What's worse, the original baby shower she planned with care, some guests didn't even show. They assumed the second one was the real event. And just like that, something deeply personal was hijacked. This is where the pain gets layered. It's not just mother-in-law drama anymore. It's the kind of slow erosion that happens in many wife versus mother-in-law stories, where a woman has to fight, not just to be respected as a partner, but to be seen as her own person. Let's talk honestly. This wasn't a blatant act of revenge. It wasn't a screaming match or a dramatic confrontation. It was subtle, passive, and incredibly calculated. And that's the danger of narcissistic mother-in-law behavior. It hides behind good intentions, while quietly undermining the daughter-in-law's autonomy. So what could she have done? Refused to attend? Spoken up mid-party? None of those felt like real options, because when you're dealing with family, and especially husband-mom drama, every move feels like a grenade. But now she's left wondering, if I don't start setting firmer boundaries now, what happens when the baby arrives? Will every parenting choice become another silent battlefield? And that's the twist here. This isn't just about a party. It's about identity, control, and the legacy we build when we don't speak up. So what would you do in her shoes? Would you play along for peace? Or would you start drawing the line, even if it means shaking the family tree? Here's a simple question to start. Can a kind gesture still be controlling if it completely ignores your wishes? That herself, after the dust settled, the second baby shower was done, the guests were gone, the food was boxed up, and all that was left was that strange, heavy silence. The kind you feel when something's been taken from you, but you don't know how to explain it. She wasn't ungrateful. In fact, she kept telling herself to be thankful. Thankful for the gifts, the decorations, the time and effort. But deep down, what she really wanted was to feel heard. And in both events, only one person truly listened. Her husband. He was the one who told her about the surprise. He was the one who supported her emotions, even when she doubted herself. In this whole story, he quietly stood between two worlds, his family and the one he's building with his wife. Now that's not an easy spot to be in, because husband-mom drama isn't just awkward, it's a real emotional strain. And when you're the middleman between a toxic mother-in-law and a stressed-out partner, the pressure can boil over fast. But thankfully, this guy stayed grounded. He didn't dismiss her feelings. He didn't side with his mom just to avoid conflict. He honored her voice. That kind of support, that's what stops a narcissistic mother-in-law dynamic from turning into a lifelong power struggle. So, what did she learn in the end? She learned that boundaries don't always have to be loud. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they're just a conversation with your partner behind closed doors. A decision not to attend every family gathering. A simple no when you're asked to give more than you can. This wasn't a true revenge story. It wasn't explosive. It was subtle. But just like many stories in the Crazy Mill Stories universe, it had one clear message. If you don't protect your space, someone else will fill it with their version of your life. And now, as she gets closer to giving birth, she's learning how to reclaim her space. Gently, but firmly. So here's where we close today's story, but open up the conversation. If you've ever had a moment where a kind gesture crossed the line, just drop a "I've been there" in the comments. No need to explain, just that emoji and sentence. That's all. Because chances are, someone else scrolling through the comments needs to see it. You're not overreacting, you're not alone, and your voice matters. Until next time, thanks for listening to another chapter of Storytime with Twist, where every family drama has more than one side, and every voice deserves to be heard.